Procrastination. It's a bit hard to pronounce, but that's probably the most difficult thing about it, since it in itself requires nothing of you. Or does it? Sometimes I actually see it as an attack from a former self who's lower in self-esteem and gets his artistic work criticized. Why can't I just ignore him and rather look at the times I've been praised for my work? Is it because I'm doing something new and there's a built-in insecurity to this new project? Procrastination certainly asks something from you. But let me try to sort out my problem with it, and hopefully not inspire you to procrastinate too. I will soon tell you what I'm currently procrastinating. And I must also say that I am primarily making this video and others soon to follow as a self-help method for myself to try and trick myself into not procrastinate so much, and maybe soon completely abolish it altogether. This first video will be more about me than the ones I'm planning ahead, so I'll try my best not to fall into a narcissistic path on this one. I'll probably fail, but you have been warned. A long time ago, in another apartment far away, the old me was tired of all the day-to-day mundane work I did for a living, when I knew for myself I should instead focus on my artistic abilities. I learned to draw comic characters when I was just 5. Although they were far from perfect, I was indeed in visual detection mode early on. And I perfected my drawing skills in high school when I was 17. And I was ready to take on the world and go to college somewhere in the big tempting world of arts and creation. And that was my goal after I was done serving in the military. But then life happened. You know, girlfriend, baby on the way. I had to find work. I didn't mind. I had always looked forward to something like that. I continued drawing on the side, and in some periods I actually made quite a few bucks on it. But then life happened again. The relationship didn't last, and now I was just a young dad looking for a new girlfriend. Then life happened again, and I drifted further and further away from the artist in me. Except for a few instances where I developed a taste for making music after going through a few bad breakups. Music is a great therapist, even better when you get inspired to make your own. But again and again, I always gave up the dream of making success out of my creations. So there, back in 2009, on the other side of the country from where I live now, I decided to gather all my artistic abilities into one huge project. So huge, I knew it would be impossible to stray from. It was my first attempt to trick myself out of procrastinating. I was going to make my own animation show. And here I am now. I have animated an approximately 28-minute pilot and recorded and mixed and mastered all the sound bites. You know, footsteps, passing car, placing a can, opening a cabinet, and so on. The last step, and yes, I know I probably did this in the wrong order. I have already animated the mouth movements in speech, but I think it will work in the end. Procrastination issue is the character voices. Stranded once again. The voices from the past telling me this will not work. Everyone sounds the same. Project over. Maybe you'll think now, didn't he just say he had experience from recording music? Yes, and I did the singing myself. I even got a song played on national radio. Just once though. But still a win, and points added to wherever self-esteem lives inside me. The problem is that singing is a whole lot of flow. Now I had to learn something completely new. And I've dreaded this moment. And who actually is comfortable with their own voice? Who isn't already working in a field where they hear it repeated in media, and not just from inside their own heads? You don't know how others hear your voice before you hear it recorded. Your own skull's resonance make it sound a bit darker and more wholesome than it really is. So this is what the videos are for. Me getting more comfortable with my own voice, getting more articulate in my English. And to kill 2 birds with 1 stone, I also get to get things that are on my mind out there. And it's quite a lot. Everyone who's artistic and pursues a goal to create something know they have to study on their own. And spend time alone, a lot. And the bigger the project, the more you have to study. And spend more time alone. Unless it's something you're doing as a group project, of course. Still, I believe the individual artist has more to add to the group when he or she gets to know their deep self in solitary. I learned most of these things the hard way, as most wasn't taught me in school. And you might wonder why I started in 2009, and now it's 2023, and I'm still not done with a single pilot even. That's a long story. 14 years old, actually. Surely it takes time to create anything, at least if you want it to be reasonably decent, and you soon figure out that creating something nearly always takes longer than you thought. Just a year and a half into making an intro, and the popular animation program Blender, which is free by the way, I figured out something damning. I don't know how to write stories. How can I make an animation show if I don't know how to do that? The more I thought about it, the more the unholy ghost of procrastination started to creep up on me again. Was all this for nothing? I had spent at least 2 hours every day for the last year and a half on writing ideas and making the intro. I saw the whole premise of my show dissipating before my eyes, because of one more and more obvious fact. The show had no premise. I didn't know what it was about. It was just a gut feeling that I was going to make something great. And that twisted my guts and left me feeling devastated. I looked a short moment up to the heavens for answers. Luckily, I had tricked myself well enough to have created a giant airship of a project hovering over my head. And that was all I saw. So I found a script consultant online. I took a course in screenwriting. And man, was I in for an eye-opener. There was a new window into myself I had never predicted. Have you ever thought about a story you wanted to write? I actually tried writing a book once, many years before this project started. Thinking back at it now, it was mere drivel, a self-absorbed emotional train wreck. I admit that also came out of a bad breakup. Fortunately, I learned that music is such a better tool for going through a loss, as you can channel your feelings melodically and poetically instead of preaching and decreasing the reaching. However, whatever you create, there's very few gems left over, no matter what or how much you create. So I remember this good old saying, kill your darlings. During this project, within the project, learning how to write, I went on a killing spree when it came to darlings. Wonderful story ideas I actually thought were gems, but indeed was nothing but rocks dyed in feelings. I blew it all up to smaller pieces, where I, to my astoundment, found lots of smaller gems that could be used for later. So learning how to write stories is one of the coolest things I have forced myself through. And after writing 2 screenplays, both different stories, where the first sucked much and the latter sucked less, finally came the day when my script consultant gave my new and 3rd screenplay a consider. I had almost given up all hope, but this was a big win. There's 3 grades a screenplay gets: pass, consider, or recommend. I bet 95% of all scripts written gets pass, probably more. And pass doesn't mean you pass the bar, it means you probably are not even close. Anyway, I felt very pleased. But the year was now 2017, and I had spent 5 years on this project within the project. And the initial project had almost slipped out of my mind, because here opened up a new challenge. If I'm getting good at this, why don't I try and sell the screenplay? Maybe this is what I should do. Maybe it was a good thing that I soon figured out that this was an almost impossible task. I couldn't afford it. I couldn't afford to travel to places where you can meet people in that business. And most likely you had to stay there for an extended period of time to go at it again and again and again. So I had to try and do it through the internet, which went nowhere fast. It's really hard to get into the business, but it's not like I wasn't warned. Everyone says that, and they're right. So when did I find back to my old roots? When I got tired of mundane jobs and really missed creating. I had to go through a separate art project first, because artistic obsession over grandiose ideas And also, I fooled myself to think this could finance my upcoming reimagination of the good old animation project and the new premise I had slowly come up with. Well, I finished the art project, but I never got to have any exhibition anyway because the world locked down, and before it opened up again, I was back on project animation. Finally, and I just dove into it again, and I learned how to do everything faster, technically. I made a new intro in just 2 months. Of course, I already had all the old templates and reused many of them, but I figured out a lot of shortcuts and automations that speeded the project up, and this was also a great motivator. So here I am, at the gateway of the last challenge to finally get this last darling standing done. And actually, I've taken a small step into the gateway already, because just preparing this first video actually scared the unholy ghost of procrastination away a bit. I felt a little like what happens sometimes when you can't remember something and you go online to check it out, and just as you are typing the keywords into the text box, the memory suddenly comes back to you. You actually used your own internal search engine instead. That's what I call self-help. And we have a lot of these engines, we just have to learn how to use them. But I'm not out of the woods yet. I've started recording my characters' voices, and I'm saying to myself, there's no need for them to be perfect, because nobody's perfect, and fictional characters should certainly not be either. And maybe it was a good thing that I procrastinated a bit. If I hadn't, I wouldn't have inspired myself to dig a little deeper into the problem at hand, and coming up with a solution that I can use for later. So it's not so good nor bad. Always something in between that keeps shifting back and forth. I recommend to keep digging out your mind for gems and try to recreate out here in the world whatever shiny stuff you find in there. It's a great way to become a master of you. So in a few weeks or months, when I'm done, hopefully, I'll put out a special episode name on this channel, and that will be the episode name of the pilot and a link to it. You see, this is also me trying to trick myself to avoid procrastination, because now I have promised you something, and well, I hope at least one person sees this then. But I know I always, well mostly, follow up on promises. But with that, combined with artistic obsession, well, I hope it's a winner. But whatever. Either you generally thought this was a boring story and that's that, or you might be afraid to follow, to end up thinking my pilot was awful, and you being a thoughtful person, you would hate to find yourself in a position to have to use much energy in explaining how it wasn't. I hope these are fringe minorities, and that everyone in the middle would at least stay for videos about creativity, imagination, and generally mind-challenging stuff. And I can handle constructive criticism, so bring it on, I don't mind. If criticism come in any other shape or form, I might write a song about you, or you can find yourself subject for inspiration to a character in my satirical animation show. Have an exceptional day, and never stop creating.